guys, it is Tristan with Nerdettes Newsstand, and we are back with another episode of our Bad Ideas. Now, this one's going to be a little different because it actually came up organically when me and Bianca were talking, but instead of being rude like I always do, Bianca, how are you today?
I'm doing good, thank you. How are you?
I am good, but my Selena will not leave me alone. So we're gonna talk, and hopefully she just settles down. Now let's talk about basically how to start this conversation. And I've been thinking about how to name it, and I'm kind of going with like breaking the narrative. But we were talking about how we both at one point really kind of believed in the SJW stuff. So I want to kind of pick your brain here. What got you into comic books? And then what got you into, was it YouTubers kind of giving you the runaround with the SJW stuff? Was it something you read online? How did that all come about?
Okay. So, for a while I was always like thinking about maybe before 2017, I was thinking I'm like, "Oh, I think I should want to get into comics." And I'm like, cuz I'm watching all the animated versions of, everything. I've been seeing the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, and I was like, I think I want to get started. And I'm like, well, if I want to get started, what should I start with? I'm like, simple. Batman, Wonder Woman. Superman sucks. He'll be fine. And then, I would get recommended of people talking about comics, and I'm like, oh wow, this looks like super fun. Like, I kind of want what they have. Like, this seems like such a fun hobby for me to get into. And since I was already like reading manga, I was like, okay, so this is probably going to be a bit similar. And then I'm looking at everything and I'm like, okay, we got different stories from different authors from different years. And so I watched a couple of videos. I'm like, oh, okay, simple, easy. In 2017, that's when I officially started. But unfortunately, when I'm like watching videos of comic stuff, you tend to now start to see the whole SJW anti-woke side. Uh,
Right.
SJW anti-SJW side, and then I just started getting super confused, and I'm just like, "Wait, what's going on?" And I'm like, "Am I not supposed to be reading this? Am I not supposed to be liking it?" And so, it was just super weird. I was there when the announcement for, Batwoman came
Hmm.
on. I think that's when I was super, super new, like, just started. I was like, "There's a
The show?
Batwoman?" No. The comic, the New
Okay.
52 comic.
Oh, okay.
It was an interview. I don't remember if it was Steve Orlando or Mike and Draco?
Yeah, Mark and Draco.
Mark and Draco. It was one of those saying, "Hey, this is Batwoman New 52, her first release since blah 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 blah, and she's going to be a lesbian." And I remember the comments on there. A lot of them were like very very negative, because I hear people say, Batwoman, nobody ever said anything negative when she first showed up, and I'm like, well, that's a lie. I remember comments. I'm really
Right.
good at remembering comments, and because of comic fans, they call themselves comic fans. I've been reading comics since blah 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 blah, and that makes me like more into their side of things. And so I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I agree, she shouldn't be a lesbian since she was never a lesbian. And then people are like, well, it's not, it's, there was many different Batwomens with like different names or whatever, and I'm like, okay, more confusing. That kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I just rambled.
Oh
You
no,
just
you're
asked me
totally
one
fine.
question.
No, that's what I wanted to know because I get it. There was a I've read comics since I was very young. But there was a period in my life where I quit. And when I jumped back on, it was around the time Injustice was released. Um by Mike S. Miller and Tom Taylor. And I got really back into comics because of that. And mind you, it was only like a period of a couple years. So it wasn't a long time. But I, just like you, gravitate and look towards, stuff to watch on YouTube. I don't watch, besides like the, DC shows that I review, I don't watch a whole lot of stuff on TV. So I like listening to podcasts or listening to people's opinion. I find it more informative than I actually do, the nightly news or something. I find it more interesting. So I gravitated towards different YouTubers. And I really became a fan of and I told you through email who it was. I won't publicly shame anyone, but it's very easy to tell if you've been at my channel for any length of time who I'm talking about. And I started to notice, and I was really they were reviewing comics. I'm like, okay, well, I'll take your recommendation to heart. I won't pick up this. I will pick up this. And then I started to notice a pattern. There was nothing ever new being said in the content being uploaded, right? It was always kind of the same talking points, the SJW, the bad writers, the token, the diversity hires. It was always kind of the same thing over and over and over. And I'm not saying that those kind of things don't exist, but if everybody is that type of person, then nobody is, right? Like if you call everybody a diversity hire, then clearly they're not a diversity hire because they're hiring enough diversity. And I started to notice the same talking points, and I'm like, am I crazy? Like, what's going on here? So I started to kind of go back through some of my old stuff, and I'm like, there's a lot of stuff I've said on here that I was personally wrong about. Like, people talk about like politics in comics. Yes, that is a big talking point, right? But for the most part, not every comic, but for the most part, it is a reflection not of politics, but of topical ideas. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I find it interesting to be able to view kind of that world through a different lens. And not only is it is pure escapism, it absolutely is. And there are stuff that are pure escapism, but there is also that aspect of it. If you're telling a story, whether it's some sort of moral lesson or it's some sort of, simple, be kind to one another, those kind of basic things, those are always some sort of subtextual in books. Like, you really can't go into a huge dive of comic book reading without coming across those topics. And I'm like, but that's kind of how it's always been. And I started to really notice it. And I kind of got turned off from the whole thing and started doing almost more research into the topics. Like, I really dived into, I guess it would be like race studies and gender studies. Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
I just triggered 1,000 people. And I started to dig into those topics, and I'm like, I was wrong. Like, I've privatized so much content because I'm truly embarrassed by some of the things I've said.
I've done that a lot of times.
Well, like when I sit here and justify bad behavior, I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. Now, there are obviously like stuff that I totally stand behind. Like when Mags attacked Sean Gordon Murphy and called it love bombing. Like, yeah, I still stand by what I said. Sean Gordon Murphy did nothing wrong. But when I see myself defending terrible, terrible people, I kind of want to know what mindset I was in, because I feel like I bought into something that wasn't there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you kind of said you had a relatively similar experience. Tell us a little bit more about what you went through.
So for me, I was like getting a lot of stuff on my pull list, just like different random stuff that I thought would be kind of cool. And I think, what was it? There was one called Gotham City Garage.
Oh, I love Gotham City Garage. With all the
Yes.
ladies?
Yeah. And so people were like, oh no, it's similar to DC Bombshells kind of thing, you know? And I'm like, oh, okay, wow, I can't wait to read it. But like, I guess a lot of people that I was watching on YouTube, like I would look at the reviews and they were like, no, no, like they just want to make everybody lesbian. And I'm just like, oh, okay, so like what do I do then? And then I remember going to my comic shop and I'm like, I have like a budget right now and I need you, I want your recommendation, because that's what people told me to do. They like, if you go to a comic book shop, ask for their recommendation of what they would give. And I went, okay. And so he gave me this big gigantic trade paperback of DC Bombshells. And I remember when I started reading it, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is pretty interesting. Let's see how it goes. And then, but I was hearing a lot of people mostly reading, saying that, you know, DC Bombshells is just an SJW comic. And like, I'm so glad I threw all of those comics away from that year, from a very specific year. I don't remember if it's like 2014 or whatever, from like current. And I'm like, wow, you just threw them all away. And he was like, well, you know, you got to make a statement. We gotta let them know that this is not the stuff we're interested in. And I remember when I spoiled you that I remember when I spoiled you on DC Bombshells, and I'm like, oh shoot, and I deleted my comment.
I read that one super late. I love Bombshells.
Yeah, and so I thought, to make a statement for the fans, I should be doing the same. So any comic that was considered SJW, whether I read it or not, or started reading it, I threw away. I threw away my DC Bombshells. I threw away my Gotham City Garage. I threw out so many comics. It was probably like $50 worth. Like they weren't even a year old that I got them. They were only like a few months. And I was like, I think I'm doing the right thing, because, you know, this is what everybody's doing. And all the rest, like, I sold. And then, you know, now I'm hearing people that, you know, that actually liked those books and everything. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, where were you when I was looking for your perspective? I was only seeing people hating on it. And, you know, I remember seeing a YouTuber, and they had a kid, and they're like, we're going to review Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. And I'm just like, well, everybody says Kamala Khan sucks. So, like, I guess your opinion doesn't really matter, or you just don't know what you're talking about. And then the little kid was just saying how much they liked it.
Aww.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm a piece of crap. I was saying that your opinion, your view doesn't matter. And like, the kid just really liked the comic and everything. And I'm just like, well, what am I doing? Like, it just made me feel so bad. And I wasted all of that money just to like throw away my comics. And I'm just like, I should have kept it, even though I didn't not that I did like it. For like DC Bombshells, I was liking it when I was reading it, but despite me liking it, I threw it away for a message, and I realized that that message isn't. I'm sorry, like that message is kind of dumb to me. I shouldn't throw it away because it's considered SJW. If I like it, I should keep it. Why should I have to throw my money away just because you did? And so oh my gosh, like up to $50 to $100 worth of comics I just threw away. And I just got so angry about that. I worked so hard to save enough money just to get comics, you know?
And then throw it away.
So, yeah. And then, you know, once I'm reeling about this anti-SJW stuff, I was seeing such a pattern, and I'm just like, okay, I'm sorry, but I can still consider myself anti-SJW because I seem to agree more with anti-SJW-ness than SJW-ness.
Right.
But still understand where the SJW is coming from. But some of you guys say stuff that's kind of sketch. And so I'm like, okay, I think I should distance myself away from them just a little bit. Because like when people say, I think this group is sexist or racist, and I'm like, I wouldn't say all of them are. Just the some that I actually did see or did talk
Right.
to, I'm like, okay, that's just, if you don't think that's sexist what you said, if you don't think that's racist from what you said, there is no helping you. And of course, the anti SJW crowd just made me pessimistic toward everything, thinking like, hey, if there's a Spanish movie out, a movie that's made by Spanish Latin speaking people and just shows Spanish Latin speaking people, they're trying to pander to me and that it's not going to be good in the long shot. And I found that weird because I was thinking about it the other day. We are just now getting more Hispanic Latin uh media. We're getting more of that media coming out. So how is this pandering now if
Right.
lots of people have been waiting for them to make more and they're finally making more? But why does it have to be because they're pandering, not because they want to do it or because they enjoy it? Lin-Manuel Miranda, he did Hamilton, he did In the Heights, he did Tick Tick Boom, which I just saw last night with Andrew Garfield. Uh, like for the Tick Tick Boom, it was a white person movie, but that he directed. But for In the Heights, it was a Dominican Puerto Rican movie with some added Mexicans and Cubans. For Hamilton, it was just, it was just a play, which
Right.
usually for
I
plays they
love
hire
Hamilton.
anybody. I
Yeah.
still haven't seen it.
Oh my goodness.
But
You're missing
I
out.
I know, but how is it that when he makes In the Heights, that's when he's pandering, but not when he's doing anything else? Except for Hamilton. Like for some reason, like people don't understand movies and plays. Like for plays, because it's not a movie, Hollywood movie or whatever, where they actually care about being accurate. Usually, anybody can be hired for the role.
Right.
You're just seeing a play live. That's all it is. And then when In the Heights came out, they're like, oh, it's just going to be a woke movie. It's just going to be, I hope it fails and all that stuff. And I'm like, yo, this is the first time I'm seeing like a Dominican movie or movie about the Dominican Republic in like New York. So, like, why are you saying it's woke? You haven't even seen the movie. It was delayed a lot of times. And, uh, every time I'm listening to the music, there's always a comment there saying, I'm so glad it failed. And I'm like, bro, they're like, how, like, they always say it's going to be woke, but they never
Right.
ever describe how. How is it going to be woke? Because every time when there's, what's it called? A black movie out or something, movie where it's like all black people, they say it's going to be woke because they're going to talk crap about white people, and they have
Without
white people
usually
as
any
racist
proof.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But every time there's a Spanish Hispanic movie coming out, they just say nothing. They don't describe how it's going to be woke. And every single one that did come out said nothing about white people, said nothing about black people. It was literally a movie on how immigrants would come to America and work their butt off, and that they want to work their butt off. They want to work and they want money and they want to do what they want to do. Some want to create their own business, so they want to work ahead for their own business, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, it's not a woke movie at all.
They
They
did the same
even
thing
like
with West Side Story. Like
the Steven
yes.
Spielberg, like I wouldn't doubt it. Like I'm just now seeing it and I'm like, really guys? It's made by a white guy.
Yeah.
It's a story that's like In the Heights, it was already created a long time ago. It's based
Long
on
time ago.
something.
Yeah.
And then when people say, just look at the other West Side Story, the other one that came out like a long time ago. And I'm like, I've been hearing that there was a lot of blackwash and brownwash there. And you're recommending the movie? Because it's better than having one that's authentic.
Accurate. Yeah.
accurate, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're recommending the one where they blackwashed and brownwashed people because they hired just, like, whether, like, white people or white Hispanic people? How? Like, In the Heights was even better. Unfortunately, they didn't cast Afro-Latinos or Afro-Hispanics, but at least they didn't blackwash or brownwash anybody."
Right. And I started to notice the pattern too, not only with like, well, yeah, with the Marvel movies, but it was basically white male became default. And anything that swayed away from that was when it was called woke. It didn't matter if there was any sort of real talking points. Like, they would blame anything for being woke. And then I started to dive kind of into the idea of that. So if you think about it, if a movie fails at the box office, any sort of movie that has a white male lead, you will never hear about it. But once something that could possibly have a woman or minority, even going back to Ghostbusters, and I know that's a terrible movie, but it's a good example. It wasn't terrible because the actors in it, all those actors, even Chris Hemsworth, are well known. The writing on that movie was terrible. The writing was atrocious. That's what made the movie fail, not because it was female Ghostbusters. And that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. People don't see. If you hire and if you go to the extent to hire quality, it will reflect. And there are good stuff out there that are female driven or minority driven or for lack of a better terms, woke. They're really good woke properties.
Yeah, I'm waiting
But
for those comics to be sent to me, by the way.
which ones?
There was a lot of, comics or manga that I got from either Indigo or Kickstarter,
Oh,
and I was like, "Yo, this seems like the most wokest thing ever. I'm gonna buy it and review
there you
it."
go.
So, it's supposed to be coming this year. There's not a date yet, but it is a gigantic manga, and so I'm just like, "I cannot wait."
That's awesome.
And they actually are wanting to make an anime out of it.
Ooh.
So, it's like, think of magical girls like Sailor Moon.
Oh,
But in the cast, it's 4 teenage girls, I believe. 2 of them are black, 2 of them are sisters, one of them is Latina, one of them is a white person, and I think one of them is like I think 1 or 2 of them have like a not straight sexuality as well,
right.
which shouldn't be a problem. Sailor Moon had lesbians.
Mhm.
And I was like reading it because I'm very, very picky on how they do Hispanic Latina people. So I was reading the character and I'm like, okay, I approve.
That's fine. I'm the same exact way, like, with Catwoman and Harley Quinn, I'm super picky about it. Like, I'm like, yeah." And then people say representation isn't important, but yet I'm still like, "I need my Catwoman," because she doesn't look exactly like me. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I I I understand there are plenty of characters that I can go to and I relate to. But when I was reading comics as a kid, I didn't realize sometimes those messages that were in there. Like, there was a new complaint recently, when Milestone was relaunched, about Static getting political. And then you go back to his origin and it's about gun control and bigotry, and it was all very political. There just wasn't as much division in America at that time.
And the
And
cartoons.
the cartoon was so political. I
It was
remember.
about gang violence and everything.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's I think the Christmas episode. I think it was a Christmas episode where there was a girl with snow powers. I was like looking at people like not reacting to it, but writing in the comments about it. They're like, "Yo, this made me cry," and I'm just like, "I think I'll be fine. I don't really cry easily." And then my sister and I were just started crying, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, holy crap! What the heck?"
Oh my god, that's so cute. But it was like, I remember Static's dad, I believe it was, calling one of his friends' dad a bigot. Like,
I remember that.
You hear those terms more often because people point it out more often, but like I remember those things. They were there. They were there in our Captain Americas or our Supermans of the world, but we were young. We didn't notice. So now it becomes this big to do. And I didn't quite understand it at that point. I'm like, oh yeah, comics, they're going downhill. And so I wasn't reading as much. And then I dive into my channel real deep and I start reading everything. And I'm like, wait, I thought everything was woke. Why am I only seeing one random title at an indie company that's woke, but none of these are? And then now I know a lot of people say like gender swapping is inherently woke and race swapping, but they fail to remember that doesn't actually happen in the comic books very often at all. Like, unless you consider maybe Jace Fox, but that's more of a piggybacking off of an IP.
Yeah.
So I started to notice this huge pattern of hypocrisy, I guess is the best way to put it. And I'm like, okay, maybe it's me. Maybe I need, to learn more. Maybe I need a better education. But I am not seeing your point here. Your main complaint is that white men are demonized all the time, except for in Titans United, it's a white woman, and and a bunch of other properties, it's, a black woman, a black man. Where are you coming up with this at? Like, are you just repeating talking points? Because that's what it felt like. You know what I mean?
Got that a lot. I mean, like, people don't want a new static cartoon because they're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna make Reggie, I believe that was his name, right? His white friend?
Yes.
They're like, oh my gosh, they're gonna make him gay. And I'm like, okay. And what's wrong with making him gay?
Yeah, like, why
and then
are
he's
we
like, because
worried?
he was already gay before, and now it's gonna like want to pander to the LGBT people. And I was just like, but he's already gay.
Yeah.
So what is they in the cartoon, he wanted Dwayne McDuffie wanted to make him gay, but he was refused. Of course they're gonna make him gay if they were to do a cartoon.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they? That would make no sense. And they were getting angry about it because they were going to make him gay, despite him being gay in the comic and despite them knowing that he was already gay in the comics. And I'm like, I don't understand. Where's your
splitting
logic?
hairs at that point.
Yeah, and I'm just like, I'm just like, it's just so tiring sometimes.
It is, and it's tiring sometimes to like be really excited about a comic book and do a review about it, and then be like, say it's Harley Quinn. Oh my god, they made her gay. Like, bro, she's been bi for, well, ever. Like,
well, you should have seen that comment. What I saw, one of the, I don't follow the videos, but I get like their posts and everything on the new DC stuff coming out, and one of them showed like the Batgirl. I didn't send you those videos. I need to send you those videos, those Batgirl videos. But it was one of the pictures of Batgirl for the HBO Max one.
Right.
And then somebody wrote on a comment, oh my gosh, are they really making a girl Batman? And I was like, what does that mean? I know English, I can tell English is not your first language, but what do you mean? Have you never heard of Batgirl or Batwoman in your life? You cannot tell me that. Like, she's been in Young Justice. She's been in the Batman animated series. She was in the 40s with the Adam West. She's been in the animated DC movies, whether Batgirl, Batwoman, whatever. She's been there. She's always been there. I have no idea how you could not have heard about this ever. My dad's like 50, 51, 52 years old. He knows who Batgirl is. Like, what do you mean amazing. You don't know? That makes no sense.
I think everybody looks at stuff through a not everybody, I mean, that's hyperbolic, but there are a lot of people, whether it's far left or far right, that look at every single piece of media through a political lens. So if they see Batgirl, they're like, oh my God, they're changing Batman and race swapping or gender swapping him. They actually did the same thing when it was Sandman that came out there with Joanna Constantine, which is John Constantine's great grandmother. They're actually swapping John Constantine. Like, no, this is a real character. Have you not read Sandman?
No, I need to.
Yes, you do need to. It's so
I'm
phenomenal.
sorry.
It's one of the best graphic novels, in my opinion, ever made. But it's just everybody looks at it through a point, and most of the opinions I've noticed come out of ignorance, because they don't know a lot of times. Like, people online react to what they are consuming, so their initial reaction is put out there, and without any sort of real information behind it, a lot of times it comes off as pure ignorance. And I'm not trying to be super mean, but it is not hard to Google Joanna Constantine. Oh, she was in Sandman? Oh, okay. Like, that's it. That's all it takes.
The same thing was happening to She-Hulk. Somebody took a screenshot and like screenshot a lot of the comments together, and I was just like, y'all never really heard of She-Hulk before?
Oh my gosh. The same thing happened when
one of them even said that this is a disgrace to Stan Lee. And I'm like, I have
what?
one of his comics,
No.
bro. It says created by Stan Lee, bro. What are you talking about? She's even been in recent cartoons for Marvel cartoons. She's always been here.
Oh God.
I mean, I don't like how they changed her career path in that cartoon.
Right.
I was like, why are you a stunt double? What are you doing? Become a lawyer.
Yeah, I like her as a lawyer too. Same with Babs. I like her as a librarian. I think it suits them well because it shows they could use their brain as long as with their brawn. But same thing happened with X-Men. Like, I seen a video titled "Will X-Men Be Woke?" I'm like, oh my God, should we tell him? Should we tell him that X-Men is, always been woke? Like, Chris Claremont's run on X-Men, which was a long run, literally covered bigotry, race relations, religious zealotry. Like, it covered everything you could possibly think of, and it's kind of heralded as the best X-Men that to date. And it's like, wait, guys, X-Men was always woke. Like,
it might not be the woke you're thinking of in current times, but it was definitely
woke
the
for its
past
time.
definition of woke. Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what it is it's a shifting of Overton's window, right? So our society as a whole, usually every generation that is born is a little more progressive than the one before it. And we're seeing the one, what is it? I'm a millennial, so what is it? Gen Z or Gen, I don't know, whatever the youngest one is right now. Being
Alpha
more
or something.
Yeah, I don't know. Being more like socially active, more active in politics at a younger age, and getting more involved. And there's nothing wrong with that inherently, but it also drives a division between an older and a newer generation. Whereas the ones that are usually complaining are the older ones that are used to the Chris Claremont run, right? They're used to that kind of politics. And a lot of times I notice that when they say they don't like the politics in it, it's not that they don't like the politics in it, it's that it's not their politics.
Yeah, that's something I've seen. I'm actually gonna do a plug-in
Go for it.
for a movie that I know you haven't watched. I know some people on here has said they watched it, so we makes references sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to talk about Encanto.
Okay, go for it.
Because with the anti-SJWs, a lot of stuff that they say still like lingers in my brain. Like, Disney would never do this. Marvel would never do that. You know, uh,
Right.
like that one time I was talking about in Disney Plus. There's like a short of a Chinese boy like doing ballet and all that stuff, and how they talked about that issue. And despite me saying that, I still gave the thought of, well, maybe Marvel will not do Moon Knight's multiple personality
Right.
disorder, despite that I had proof that they can do it, you know? Because in my mind, it's the whole anti-Sjw. They won't do this, they won't do that, blah blah blah, da da da. You know, I had a lot of people say that. Oh, I bet they won't do the multiple personality disorder, and they did it. So like I'm always hearing, you know, they won't add any. They they're complaining now that they'll never show Moon Knight's being Catholic, and I'm like, it's funny because all the
Moon Knight's
other
Jewish.
shows. What was that?
Moon Knight's Jewish.
Oh, I don't know where they got Catholic from then.
Maybe
Can you be Jewish and
Daredevil.
Catholic? I don't know.
Daredevil is super, super Catholic. That may be it.
Maybe, but they were talking about Moon Knight because it was a Moon Knight video.
Well,
Uh,
okay.
and this is, I don't know anything, you know? But like they're always saying like this character is Catholic, this character is Jewish, blah blah blah. I bet they won't show it. And I'm like, well, when do they have to? Unless it's like a specific episode, they're not gonna just randomly
Right.
say, "Hey, I'm Catholic, I'm Pentecostal." I'm not gonna go to a random person, "Hi, I'm Pentecostal. Can I talk to you about Jesus Christ?" uh, but you know, they're always, you know, saying, "Well, we need more gingers. You know, we need people talking about their faith. We need." They even do say, and I think this is valid. Like, do they just think that Hispanic Latinos are just brown? We come in black, we come in white, we come in all different sizes and shapes and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I do agree with that one. And
Mhm.
that's why you should watch Encanto. You got a ginger, you got a priest, you have a church. He doesn't have a singing role. He doesn't, no, sorry, he doesn't have a speaking role. He has a singing role. And he is shown multiple times, one even reading the Bible. And
Oh, wow.
you have this movie where you have white people, brown people, black people, literally all sizes and shapes. And you even have one of the characters who's, like somebody said, think of like Encanto with a family of full of superpowers. It's like the X-Men or whatever. And I'm like, I can see that. So one of them that has strength, she's like, I lift up churches. Like it is mentioned, it is talked about. And you're like, why? Because they actually had people, Colombian people, I think some Colombian, some not, I don't remember. They spoke to them, say, hey, what do we do? Because we don't want to be offensive. And the movie is great. It's not offensive to anybody, and it's still a great movie, and they represented so many people. And it's not even made by Hispanic Latino people. It's made by white people who just had help from them, you know?
Yeah.
And like everything looks so fluid, like the way they move, the way they dance. It's like it's for real how we dance. Like, not me, I don't dance. But like when you see like Hispanic people dancing, I'm like, how did you do that? How did you get all of that? And then I learned that there was a woman named Kai Martinez who is a choreographer who just happens to be Colombian. And she's been doing stuff for so many artists like Bruno Mars, and I could name like 10 other people right now, but they're not popping up in my head. Thanks a lot, brain. And she was offered to do the choreography to We Don't Talk About Bruno, which is the most probably one of the most watched thing ever. Like
Yeah, I seen
I'm
it
seeing
broke like
rappers react to it. And
I
I'm like,
seen it,
wow,
it's
that's kind of
going
weird.
huge.
Yeah, and then I'm looking at the choreography and I'm like, so that's how they did it. They got the people who know the dance moves, and they just copied it. And I'm like, that is fantastic. Not only that, but from people who are like, how come we don't have any good men? How come we don't have any good dads? How come we don't have any good husbands? Encanto has literally all of that. You have great husbands, you have great dads, dads that like go sorry. dads that protect their kids and love their kids and say, oh my gosh, you're doing such a great job, and then you have them like defending their wives. One of them there's a woman named Peppa. She's a ginger. She controls the weather from her mood. And
Oh, that's cool.
her husband, who is she's like super tall and he's like short and he's like afro, and he's always telling her to like let her emotions out and everything, and whenever she's like, I'm trying my best, and he's like, yes, she is trying her best, and I'm like, yes,
Aww.
you, I love that. He's always trying to have her open up and everything, and it's just so cute. And I just like love the movie because of the messages and everything. And messages aren't bad. The messages for this is like it's just not a thing that just happens in Colombia. It happens in everywhere. Which is like you have so much conflict in your own where you live that you have to move and go somewhere else.
Right.
And that's what causes people to become immigrants in different countries, because they can't stay where they are. They're
Right.
afraid they're going to get killed, or it's just like too hard to even pay for rent or whatever. But unfortunately they go to America because they think, land of the free, you'll just be helped. But no, unless you're legal.
Right.
And I'm hearing, how come men don't give like sacrifices and all that stuff anymore? And I'm like, there's a male sacrifice in this movie.
Oh.
And like they showed it twice and I tried not to cry. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just so, it's so heartwarming, it's so funny. It's everything that everybody complained about, and it's all in this movie. And I'm like, but you guys won't watch it because if you're not interested in watching it, that's a completely different thing. But people saying that they don't watch it because they're trying to pander, or because it's woke, or it's just like a cookie cutter stuff, and I'm like, it's not any of those, like, at all. And you just have this like narrative that it's just going to automatically be that because it's not white. And then when it is white, you still treat it like it's going to be bad. And I'm like, how does that work? Like,
It it
they,
doesn't make sense.
it doesn't. And I'm like, you're just being pessimistic about everything. And it's because of that, it's ruining your judgment, and it's ruining stuff that you could be enjoying. Like the new Bond movie,
Oh
No
yeah,
Time
that
to
was
Die.
called Woke like a year before it came out.
Yeah, and my cousin saw it and he wants to see it with the rest of us. And I'm like, yo, so like, how is it? And I'm like, is it woke? Like, I told him about this stuff. So like he understands what I'm talking about. And he's like, no, not really. And I'm like, really? And so like I was looking at a chat room, live chat, and they were talking about it. And they're like, I heard that she takes 007's number or whatever. And
Mhm.
I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, is that true? And he was like, well, she was offered, but she said no, she didn't want
Oh
it.
wow.
And I was like, oh, are you're serious? And he's like, yeah. It's like, it was honestly not a bad movie. It was action, it was fun, though there was one thing that irritated me. And I'm like, oh man, what was it? And he was like, so there's a Latina there. And I'm like, uh-huh. And for her introduction, there's a scene where she's fighting everybody to Latin beats. And I was like, really? What's wrong with that? And he's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. He's like, it looks very cringy. You probably would have to see it. And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe. And I'm like, I'll see how it is. And I'm like, well, what was the problem? And he's like, why why Latin music? And I'm like, oh, like you're saying it could have been like any music, like jazz or whatever.
Right.
He's like, yeah, but it was specifically Latin music because she was a Latina. And I'm like, ah, okay. So it's like black people and hip hop.
Yeah, Saggy even mentioned that in a stream once, that it's always with the hip hop.
It's gotta be with the hip hop, hippity hop.
And the funny thing about it is I actually seen that 007, the new one you were just talking about, was going to be woke because in one part James Bond sits on a motorcycle behind the girl. That was the whole justification for it
I've
that
seen
I
that a
saw at
lot.
first. I don't get how that's woke. Like, I don't understand that in the slightest. If you're so obsessed with something that is what makes it woke, then you're not going to enjoy anything. And what's the fun of life if you can't enjoy something?
And it's like they'll only go for the stuff like Godzilla or the new Ghostbusters coming out, and I'm like, that's 2 movies.
Yeah.
And then
and
I
it's
guess
always
a lot of people are not
predictable
interested in the Matrix.
Well, I never saw the first, so I wasn't interested. But it's always like the same thing. Like, the only time you hear anything good, it's like you said, like with Ghostbusters, it was very groupthink. Everybody liked it. It was all good in that sort of anti-SJW fandom. But they hated Shang-Chi and Eternals. But once they had a white male lead again in Spider-Man, they loved it again. It blows my mind how transparent these things are. But I don't understand what took me in my mind to see it for probably a year and a half, right?
What was wrong with Shang-Chi?
I don't know. I haven't seen it yet. But
I mean, like,
it was woke. It was woke
I
because there's
just
an Asian
finished
lead.
it, and so I'm just like, there's not really anything woke about it. I mean, there's some stuff in the storytelling that I was like, really, really, and I'm just, but besides that, it was a pretty fun movie, and I'm pretty hyped to see more.
And I still gotta see it. I know it's on Disney Plus. I need to get Disney Plus back. The only time I keep it is when it has a show that I like on. So like I had it through WandaVision and Falcon. Yeah. And Moon Knight's coming up. So I know I'll get it then. So I'll watch Shang-Chi then and Eternals probably. But it blows my mind like how transparent this stuff can be. And I don't know if this is something that is even fixable at this point. It's so ingrained, no matter how much I try to, on my channel, talk about it and get people actually looking behind the scenes, like giving something context instead of just straight up saying, well, guess what? Justice League is dying. It's new diversity league. DC is dead. How dare they? I try to give context behind it, and people aren't very receptive. Now, some people are. I can't say that. But people need to understand context before judging. And I think we're also quick to be reactionary. You know, YouTube and capitalism in general makes us want to be the first one to the story, be the first one to the article, you know, have the clickbait headline. And I think that is in a way in itself kind of damaging, right? Because people I'm so guilty of it, right? Like yesterday I seen a video, it said Mickey Mouse changed, Minnie Mouse changed her costume.
I saw that post and it was deleted, I guess.
Yeah, because I didn't look into the context. Once I looked into the context, I realized it was for a month and for their Paris line.
What is it? What was it? I was so confused.
They changed Minnie Mouse's costume and I thought it was forever until I looked into the context and realized, because the video that I watched on it didn't say any of this. You know, like it was just like, they're changing her. It's an attack on our femininity. What? It's for a month and it's for one line. It's okay.
It's a clothing line, right? Or something?
Some Paris line, yeah.
Oh.
And it's like, I love the original mini design. I think most people do. That's why I was like, thanks. I hate it. I thought it was forever. And then I realized the context.
She has changed her outfits a lot, though.
Yeah.
Like I do like when she is like wearing pink. Like there's some outfits that she wears pink. And Disney's House of Mouse, she's like a manager or something there. So she's wearing like manager clothes.
Yeah, and she's got like a button-up vest suit, right? If I remember
something correctly. Like that, yeah. But I don't know clothes names. And in this one, you know, despite people saying, you know, she's not feminine anymore, she still has literally bows everywhere in her costume, despite her wearing pants.
I think
it's cute.
worse, the color scheme. I think it's the black and blue are too close to me. And I think like it would be really cute if you could lighten up the shade, maybe make it like a darker purple or something.
Ooh.
It would be perfect. But
even a light blue, a baby blue, which she's worn before, would, I think, have been at least better.
right.
Like, or even a white color.
Something to make them stand out. But like even this happened recently with the M&Ms. Did you see that?
The green M&M?
Yeah. Like
I saw a funny video on that.
I don't
he's like, give me back my slutty M&M.
That's what I'm saying. Feminists come in all forms. You have your free the nipple feminist. Let her be a slut. Fuck it. She's an M&M.
Green and brown ones lesbians, I heard.
I don't think so. Maybe.
That's what I heard. Is because like in every single commercial, like they're together with the guys. They're never ever interested in the guys. And I was like, oh, maybe. I don't know. I read it somewhere and I'm like, if that's true, good for them, I guess.
Right, like they're candy. They're fictional candy characters. Nobody cares. They just want to eat the candy. So the redesign was clearly some sort of corporate, a big thing for them. And
it was ugly.
It's silly. But to get upset about it is what absolutely blows my mind. That you are so invested in it. And I get you think it's changing through, taking away femininity. And I actually think it's really dumb. Like, yeah, make her a crazy slut. Nobody cares. Like, it's just a cutesy M&M. But to act like it's bigger than what it is where I find it to be super disingenuous. Like, oh man, I know it's cringy, but I seen a clip from, I think it was on might have been on Xander Hall, but it of Tucker Carlson getting mad and saying that they don't make him sexually aroused. And I'm like, we're talking about fucking candy, dude. Chill the fuck out. Like, it just gets to a point where the talking points are all the same, no matter what the situation. And I kind of just check out. Like, I kind of feel like I do at a point want to push back against it because I think it's a lot of it is false and fabricated information. But I also want to be able to enjoy things. And I think that's the most important part of it all is it takes away a lot of people's joy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Oh, by the way, it was a gay guy who said, bring us back our slutty M&M, just in case. I feel like I should say.
That's so funny. Yeah, I agree with them 100%. Like,
I agree with them too. I'm like, I'm sorry, this ain't it. The only time a guy can say that something looks like a slut is because of
That's right. That's funny though, because there was nothing wrong with the design. There's nothing wrong with the new one, but it's also okay to show girly girls. It's also okay to show, more butchy girls.
They're more intelligent than the guy M&Ms.
Oh my! They went through some serious thinking about these M&M personalities.
They put so much thought.
That's so crazy to me that they had to put that much thought into it. But like, it's their brand. I get it. They gotta do what's best for them. But people always complain that they're pandering to this more progressive audience. And the thing is they wouldn't be pandering to, or, whatever you want to call it. They wouldn't use those talking points or those points in their redesigns if it wasn't profitable. So clearly at some point you pushing back isn't working. It's more seen from, I talked to a couple of people for one of my video I did a rant on, and they were like, yeah, we think those people are stupid. We don't even pay attention. Like, normies don't pay attention. They just want to enjoy. And when you take that away from somebody is where I have the issue. Like, so much to a point where you threw away your bombshells. And bombshells, oh my God. The art alone is worth it. Have you seen Harley Quinn as an elf? It is fucking amazing. I love bombshells. What's that?
An elf?
Yeah.
Context.
She's like a little, not really an elf, but she's dressed up for Christmas. But the designs in Bombshells and the storytelling, even if it was the female characters, doesn't make it woke. Being gay doesn't make something woke. Being a person of color doesn't make something woke. And that's where we've gotten to at our society right now, is that everything is woke unless it is white straight male.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen a lot of people on your comments saying, well, we're not saying if it's gay or if it has a minority that it is woke. And I'm like, no, but you guys, that's how you guys are judging it.
Right.
Like, you don't say, oh, I hope it's not woke. You say it's gonna be woke.
Exactly.
It's gonna do bad. They're pandering. Like, I'm not saying that's automatically people, that's not everybody. Of
Right.
course, there's some people who like don't give that judgment, and I'm just trying to get out of that judgment, because that if I still kept having that judgment, I would not have watched so many movies that were coming out today.
Exactly. And like, if we had more of a wait and see attitude, I think it would. And I know, like I said, everybody's reactionary, but if you had a wait and see and you actually did the due diligence, 99% of these people's content would disappear. Like, there's nothing wrong with theorizing about a movie, but to come out and say Shang-Chi is woke because he's a minority or because of the marketing that the mainstream media did is fucking ridiculous. Because you've basically, these people have watered down this word to a point that it doesn't mean anything. It means I disagree with you. I disagree with it. Same with SJW and same with Nazi. Like, they've lost the meaning to me because I can't take anyone seriously, because here's what it is. Everybody cries wolf so often, it's completely gone. You've lost the meaning, and you've lost a lot of people along the way. And then on top of it, you've made a lot of people not enjoy things because they start to see through the political lens. Like, it is not a coincidence that most of these people also have political channels. It's because they're the fan of the politics. They're not really a fan of, like, everybody coming out and talking about gay Superman. For one, it's not woke, the comic book, and it's decent. And for two, when did you care about John Kent before?
I was super surprised of how they had such a problem with Jace being Batman. Like, I was one of the reactionaries. I'm like, Black Batman, like, what the heck? And then somebody was like, so Terry McGinnis can be a future Batman, but another person can't.
Yep.
And I was like,
same
oh
with
my gosh,
Miles.
you're right.
Ben Reilly's okay to be Spider-Man, but not Miles. What? You're kind of showing your hand there, buddy.
They say, well, we don't call Miles Morales, we don't call him Spider-Man, we just call him Miles Morales. And I'm like, yeah, and you don't call Ben Reilly Spider-Man, you call him Ben Reilly. We don't call Anya Corazon Spider-Girl, they call her Anya Corazon. Like,
that's pretty.
You can call Miss Marvel because it's like, I don't know, it's a different name, but people still say Kamala Khan, Mrs. Marvel, right. Miss Marvel.
I say Kamala Khan myself.
Yeah, it's just more recognizable because there's just so many. But that doesn't mean that they don't care much about the character. Even if they had a different, unique name, they're still going to call it Venom is Venom. And you can still call him Eddie Brock or Flash Thompson.
Yep, exactly. And that's when I find it actually rather amusing. Like, when you call a token, when you say it's okay for Wally West to exist as a character of the Flash, but it's not okay for Jess Chambers or Wallace West. But what's the difference here? Oh, there isn't one besides skin color? Okay, you showed your hand. And that's where it's just like, I'm done dealing with ignorance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we are going to wrap up. I have to get going, but I want to thank you so much, Bianca, for coming on and talking about this with me. I find it super interesting. We may have to talk about this in further detail. I love picking your brain. I love
Cool.
knowing that I'm not the only person out there seeing this stuff, so I really do appreciate it.
Mhm. Maybe a live next time.
That's right. Don't miss it, people. All right,
And
make
watch
sure you guys
Encanto. Watch it.
watch Encanto. Lesson of today, watch Encanto.
Yes.
Make sure you guys hit like, subscribe, of course, all that fun stuff, and we will see you. And check out Bianca's channel in the description. We will see you next time.
Bye.